All right, let's dive into the secret life of something you probably have in your kitchen, cast iron. We're going to uncover how these incredible, invisible forces decide whether that pan will last for 5 minutes or for 5 generations. It all starts with something like this, an heirloom. It looks like a simple cast iron pan, but it's been passed down through a family, holding way more than just memories. There's a story of endurance literally baked right into the metal. And that story brings up a really interesting question. We all think of iron as being super strong, right? But it can also be incredibly fragile. So, what's the difference? Why is it that some iron lasts for centuries, while another piece can just shatter with one sharp knock? Well, the answer is hidden deep inside the metal itself. It all comes down to the shape of the graphite inside. On the left, you've got this flaky graphite. See how it creates all these little fault lines? That makes the iron brittle. But on the right, that's the good stuff, rounded spherical graphite. These little spheres basically stop cracks in their tracks, making the iron strong and ductile. That means it can bend a little without breaking. Okay, so to really get to the bottom of this paradox, strong versus weak iron, we have to go back to the beginning. Our journey starts not in a kitchen, but in the fiery heart of a foundry, where this metal's destiny is sealed from the very start. And what's so wild is that the secret to its future strength is locked in right at the moment of creation. As that molten iron cools down, as it turns from a liquid to a solid, this microscopic drama starts to unfold that will define its character forever. To really understand what's happening, we've got to zoom in, like way, way in, down to the microscopic level where this graphite is actually born. So in the world of metallurgy, these graphite structures don't just pop out of nowhere. No, they need something to grow on. They need a seed. The fancy term for this is heterogeneous nucleation. But honestly, just think of it like a plant sprouting from a seed in the ground. The graphite needs a tiny little particle in that molten iron to kickstart its growth. And, not just any particle will do. For a seed to work, it has to be just right. It's got to have this perfect trifecta of properties. First, it has to form easily. Second, its crystal structure needs to be a perfect match for graphite to latch onto. And maybe most important, it needs a super high melting point so it doesn't just, dissolve back into the molten iron. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. It all comes down to this. If you want to control the final properties of the iron, to make it strong instead of brittle, you have to first control the creation of millions of these tiny, microscopic foundations. This brings us to the master chefs of the foundry world, the metallurgists. And trust me, they do not leave this to chance. They have a very, very carefully controlled recipe to create the absolute perfect seeds for strong, ductile iron. It's this precise 3-stage process. First up, preconditioning. They add elements like cerium to create a nice uniform base of stable little seeds. Then comes the main event, the magnesium treatment. This is the key. It gets rid of impurities like oxygen and sulfur, and it's almost like magic. It forces the graphite to grow into those strong, round shapes we want. And finally, inoculation. They add a last-minute sprinkle of even more seeds just to guarantee a really dense and uniform structure. Okay, but here's where the story gets really wild. This whole process is so incredibly sensitive that even a minuscule amount of a contaminant, I'm talking a tiny unwanted trace element, can throw the entire recipe into complete chaos. Let's talk about an element called tellurium. We're not talking about a lot here. It only takes this much, just 60 parts per million, to completely poison the whole process. To put that in perspective, that's like one single drop of ink in a massive bathtub. It's almost nothing. So now we can connect the dots. We can link this microscopic drama directly to the real-world strength of the final product. Let's look at exactly what that one tiny drop of tellurium does. Just look at this chart. As that tiny amount of tellurium goes from 20 up to 60 parts per million, the volume of internal defects, this stuff called microshrinkage, it absolutely skyrockets. We're talking about microscopic holes that create weak spots all through the iron. So what's happening? Well, tellurium basically poisons the seeds. It dramatically reduces the number of graphite nodules that can even form. And with fewer nodules growing, the metal doesn't solidify evenly, which leads to that huge increase in weak spots. It's a total domino effect. So really, it all boils down to this direct trade-off. The goal is
always a high nodule count. You want tons of tiny seeds because that gives you a strong final product. But a contaminant like tellurium, it poisons those seeds. You get fewer, larger nodules, and you end up with a weak, brittle iron that's just riddled with defects.
Okay, so what's the big takeaway from all this? Microscopic seeds, weird trace elements. Why should we care about all this stuff happening inside a vat of molten metal?
Well, because this one idea, it's pretty much the foundation of all of modern material science. It's this principle of learning how to control the invisible microscopic world so we can build the visible macroscopic world that we all rely on every single day.
I mean, think about it. The fate of these microscopic seeds, particles smaller than a grain of dust, determines everything. It determines if your cast iron pan becomes an heirloom. It determines the safety of the engine block in your car, the strength of the pipes that bring water to our cities, the reliability of the massive machines that build our entire world.
It's just a powerful reminder that even in the most ancient, most solid-seeming objects, there's this incredible story of creation happening at a scale we can barely even imagine. So the next time you pick up that heavy pan, you'll know the secret to the strength you're holding right there in your hand.